Welcome to the Qfly Q&A update with a couple of members from industry that are the people that we go to for answers. I will throw firstly to David Cousins, who will be giving us an update on the Qfly situation before we go through and find out who the other panellists are. David, over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Welcome everyone. My name is David Cousins. I'm the incident controller that's looking after the Queensland fruit fly response in Coolbelup at the moment. I'm sad to say that there has been a new detection since I last spoke online. Last Friday we picked up a male Queensland fruit fly close to where our first female was detected. So that resets our program, unfortunately. That requires us to go back and restart our baiting program and as well as our program for releasing flies. So that's immediately around that detection, and the owners nearby are going to be seeing a lot more of us, unfortunately, for the next 12 weeks. We have also therefore needed to be changing up how we're, well, not changing what we're doing, but extending the period of time at which we'll be working with all those that work in and around the Market City complex, and the movement of product in and around the quarantine area and in and out of that, not only with the Perth Market City, but with other locations as well, which I'm sure other people will talk to shortly. That's a very brief update on where we're at in the response at the moment, and I'm happy to throw to the next person to update on what they do and where they are at.
Okie doke. Rowan, spotlight's on you.
Yeah, hi guys, Rowan Prince. Obviously, if you haven't met me before, I'm the Director of Horticulture and Irrigated Agriculture at the Department of Prime Industries. So given the response is affecting our industry, I'm here to basically make sure that you guys are getting the most up-to-date information. Any concerns, questions that need to be addressed are being addressed, and that you know who to contact, who is the industry liaison officer, who you need to speak to if you've got concerns with things that are happening around your movement of your fruit, or if you're having troubles. But really just wanted to be here to make sure I can support any questions that come up during the presentation. And I think recently you would have had industry communication come out from the department on the Qfly response in Coolbelup. So I guess that if you do have any questions following that, please feel free to put them in the chat, or put your hand up and Sam can facilitate those answers for us.
Okay. I will throw you to Rebecca, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Moore. I'm the CEO here at Perth Markets, obviously where a lot of your product is coming in and then going out. And obviously we're working very closely as a conduit for information for our wholesalers to make sure that they understand what they need to do, and we're obviously having DPIRD on site every single day, who are making sure that there is compliance both from product as it arrives, as it goes through the wholesale chain, and then out through the buyers as well. So I can answer questions on that if people have them.
Awesome. And last but not least, if I could ask Sonia to jump into frame and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm not actually David Cousins, I'm Sonia Broughton, but I had issues, so we're just sharing the one computer. I'm the Chief Plant Biosecurity Officer from Western Australia, so I get to have a look at all these responses, and I guess have a more of a role of overseeing it and seeing how they're actually going. Also, obviously here to answer any industry questions that could come up. So feel free. Thank you.
Awesome. Okie doke. That is our panel of experts. So if anybody would like to ask a question, please feel free, unmute yourself, ask a question. Try not to talk over each other because it gets a little bit tricky. But doesn't look like anybody's putting their hand up, so I will shoot off with a first question. There has been a concern about both conventional and organic growers with the amount of plastic that they're needing to use to cover pallets to get them into the market. Are there any other options? How long is this going to go on? Because there's price and there's also the waste aspect. So I'm not sure who I'm shooting that question to, but it was something that has been brought to my attention by one of our growers. And yeah, I think it's probably a concern for everybody. Are there other options for covering a pallet? Are there other options for things like that?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Perhaps a question for me, as being the incident controller, we have spent quite a lot of time looking at options for growers and people on the market floor, whether they're buyers or sellers, on what options they do have with regard to wrapping or not wrapping. So if they can contain it in a secure manner, if it's going from a truck that is covered, from there straight into a cool room, and then from the cool room it's being bought and then sold straight from the cool room. There's no need for any change in wrapping arrangements. It can all stay as it had been prior to the outbreak of Queensland fruit fly. If it's going to be sitting on market floors or on the buyer floor after purchase, then there is need for it to be contained, or if it's coming in a truck that's not I guess covered, then there's issues with it. So wrapping it can be as strict, I guess, if you want to use that word, as using cling wrap and covering the whole lot, or using some other form of plastic bagging, but it also can be used with some fly-proof netting that goes over the whole pallet. And again, that can be used in transport if it can be secured properly, or it's certainly being used quite widely on the market floor at the moment, and strongly encouraged as the preferred option for a whole bunch of reasons, including being able to lift up the fly netting easily and look at the product, and being able to break it up as well as required.
Okay, awesome.
Can I just add to that one? It's really important that growers are speaking to their agents that they deal with in the market, because each of them have different arrangements on site. So depending on their cool room structures, their display floors, those types of things. So it's really, really important that they're working collectively with their agents to understand how the products and what's going to happen to it when it arrives on the Perth Market site. Also, it's important to note that the product, when it's taken out from the wholesale agent's floor to a buyer parking bay, often they're in different sizes of amounts. So it's not like you get a whole truckload that moves into the market and then moves to a buyer. It's all broken up and distributed as they would know. So it's really important that they work with that agent to make sure that they know what's happening to their product and how it's being moved around.
Awesome. That's some good info there too. Thank you, Rebecca. All right. Anybody else got a question?
Hi, Helen. Yes, but the way that DPIRD have explained to me, it's a shared responsibility. So it's whoever has control of the product at the last point is responsible for the product. So yes, once you've delivered it to the wholesaler and they take responsibility for it, they are responsible for how it moves around, but they should be talking to you around how they want that product to delivered. So whether or not they want it with plastic lined boxes or whether they want it in tubs, etc., etc. So yes, it is the responsibility of the wholesaler once it's there.
Yeah. The short answer is yes. The long answer is not very much. So it's only several hundred metres away from the original detection, which means that it's expanded only by a couple hundred metres. So you won't see any great change in the map that will be coming out in the next, hopefully today, to be honest. We're hoping to get an updated one through to everyone so that they can see where the border now lies. But 250 or 300 metres, I think, is the distance between the two detections.
I mean, one thing we can look at going forward is working with our comms guys here and working with your comms guys in industry to potentially do some education with the public about their responsibility or the impact that it has when fruit's moved in that way. So I'll sort of take that on board and speak to our guys here in the comms team and work out if there's anything that we can do to raise the attention of that pathway as one that we find it difficult to manage without their help. And bring the whole, again, the social science and the social involvement in being part of the solution.
So I know that the protocol itself doesn't change, I guess, how we approach the eradication would, but yes, the 15 kilometre would still stand, and how we manage that 15 kilometre eradication program. Well, the eradication program doesn't occur over the whole 15 kilometres, but the 15 kilometre suspension area would still be in place if it was to occur in a commercial setting.
Sharon, there's been a lot of effort put into improving the understanding of the benefits of biosecurity on farm. Generally, I mean, so we can talk about the eradication program, the pilot eradication program from Canningvale, and the response from the growers around that. We've done Boosting Biosecurity, had a program where it was working with the wine industry on biosecurity around the wine grapes. And I think in general, the response to those programs has been a little bit underwhelming in terms of the uptake and the I'm going to say the value that the industry has seen in the programs. So I don't think until we can get to a point where it's a shared value, so an industry request that growers are actually wanting to be involved in, putting a massive department-led effort into the Farm Biosecurity Extension Program is going to result in a high degree of uptake. So obviously with change management, and we're talking about change management here, first thing is the awareness. We have to work on the awareness of the benefits of on-farm biosecurity together. We then have to get some change in practices, and that comes down to the drivers, whether they be the economic drivers or the time drivers, or the knowledge, whether they have all the knowledge to do the work. And then it comes down to a whole heap of other things to embed that practice before practice will change. So I guess my response would be, listen, if there's a will to come together across industry and work on this, I'd be absolutely happy to have that discussion. I haven't seen it done in a coordinated way with buy-in from growers recently. So yeah, absolutely happy to open that discussion again. I think it's something that would be beneficial for growers and the state, and it's about getting sharing that vision of what it could do to better manage our farms.
Well, we haven't been to every single Coles, Aldi, Woolworths premise around the place. We've been to the ones that we see as being highest risk, obviously the ones that are closest to the Qfly outbreak. There's a lot of supermarkets to attend. There has been information gone out to the local Coles and Woolies groups that can be distributed amongst their various stores, but we haven't physically visited every single one in the 15 kilometre zone. We have also been in contact with the Coles, Woolies and Aldi distribution centres and have had some visits occurring there as well, but that's where we're at, I guess, with those other alternative receivers of produce. We've also been in contact with a number of the community markets that are around the place, again, largely focusing in and around the detection sites. So those that are in closest proximity to them, and then some of the farmers markets, inverted commas, type retail outlets that we've been to as well. So they are certainly all on our radar and receiving some of our attention. As Rebecca noted, we're at Perth Markets every day, literally 7 days, but we're not visiting all those other ones on a 7-day basis. Physically don't have resources to do that.
Yeah. If I can just add to that, DPIRD, we have a Saturday clearance market and a Sunday community market, and they are attending both of those, and our guys that are operating, our stallholders, etc., are compliant in particular probably have a higher level of compliance than most other markets around the area, just because of the fact that we're operating on Perth Markets. So we've been very strict with how they're allowed to operate on the site as well.
And the delivery, because I know that some people go from the like deliver to the markets, and the markets deliver to various distribution centres. That same kind of that same level of protocol is being followed by like the market agent, delivery drivers, and things like that.
I can answer that one probably. Yes, it is. It's because it's product coming into the market and product going out of the market. So therefore, everyone has that shared responsibility along that chain of distribution, so to speak. So we also created some principles with DPIRD around how that product can be moved in and around the market. So, for example, if the product, because quite often they've got to do Jenga to get it on their trucks when it gets out of into the buyer bays. So it's very much between the agent and the buyer to make sure they're following the right protocols as it leaves the site as well.
I'll just let you just say that we have worked with Perth Markets on this one, and we've done some risk analysis on a bunch of different things. I'll let Rebecca answer, and if I've got anything further to add, I'll do so at the end.
So the Perth Markets, we operate what we call a waste transfer station here at the markets. So tenants can actually send either their cardboard, their plastic, or their organics to us, in which we dispose of, and they're charged on a per kilo rate for that. In response to what's happened with the Qfly, all of our organics that was received by the waste transfer station used to go to North Bannister. Now, what we've done is we've made arrangements that instead of going to North Bannister, which is outside the quarantine area, it is now sent to Richgrove, which is within the quarantine area, and it's therefore treated and composted and everything else which fits within the Qfly treatment program. As a result of that, we don't need to cover the product as it leaves because it's being sent to within the quarantine area. So we've worked with DPIRD on those arrangements. And it's going every day, so it's not sitting for any period of time, it's not stagnant, it's being moved. There's a lot of movement around where it's going into in terms of the big trucky bits, and then it's sent down there and it's treated. In terms of where bigger product is sent to, back on the waste transfer, sometimes people put organic waste into what we call general waste bins. We're now rejecting those bins unless they're completely wrapping any of the organics within those general waste bins. So they've got to go back, and literally some of the guys are having to filter out all the organics there and then. In terms of the product that does go direct to farmers, it's on the onus of the tenant that is working with those farmers to actually manage how they distribute that product, because they own the product. So if a pig farmer's coming in and grabbing a truckload of organics, he needs to work with the wholesaler, etc., in terms of making sure that it's following the same protocols as everybody else. Again, all of that is up to the individual tenant that has the product or is working with that person. So it's not, we can't do it, and nor can DPIRD can monitor it, but it's very much around the tenant has the obligation because they own the product at that time. And if there's someone's coming to collect it or to distribute it, that they need to work with that person.
When we do get notified of that occurring, and it has happened a few times now, whether through a market agent or through someone else just mentioning that, hey, did you know X, Y, Z, we do follow up with the person that's undertaking that activity, and we follow up and work out where it's going. We add additional traps if we need to around the whole chain from where it leaves until where it goes and gets deposited. And we also talk with the person taking the fruit/vegetables off site and how they can change their management practice as well. So we do look at it, and if there's some that we haven't come across, we're happy to hear about that and work with them as well.
Yep.
So there was a female that was originally found in Coolbelup that started off the response, and we've found a male, so we've got one of each that we've found in the last few weeks.
But they're not related to the one that was...
The short answer is no, we don't know. So that it requires quite a lot of insects to be able to do the genetic testing to verify one way or another. And because we've only got the 2 specimens, we can't do that at this stage. So, and we hope that we don't get to the point where we can, to be honest. We'd rather.
Yeah, that was my next question. Has any testing been done?
Right. So there's been some, which I think I touched on a little bit earlier. There's work being done. That's okay. Being done on the Dalkeith group. So we got a lot of flies out of the Dalkeith detections, and that work is being done to look at how that may relate to other areas in the country and their genetic makeup. So whether we can perhaps link that outbreak to a location, but when we only get 1s and 2s and 3s, it's simply just not enough to be able to get the material that we need to do that body of work. The life cycle doesn't change greatly as far as duration goes, but obviously they play different parts in the life cycle. So we can certainly look at that and update that information on the website if it's not there. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. And then my question is to the Perth Markets. Has this incident and the situation around the markets being involved in the incursion area, have you got biosecurity plans in place or risk assessments for potentially other pests being involved at a later date? Or have you got plans to put that in place?
Yeah. Yeah, hi. It's an interesting thing because we're, as the landlord, it makes us in a different position to say Market West to represent the market agents here on site. We have, I guess, what we could term business continuity plans. We don't have a particular biosecurity plan for pests, so to speak, because the research that we've done talking to other markets is quite often that it's a different response each time. You know, medfly compared to Qfly compared to something else. So we're very much guided by the requirements of DPIRD as well, and what that means for us on the site. So DPIRD have really taken control in terms of telling us what's required of the tenants and the growers and everything else, and we've really been the information conduit for that, making sure that the tenants are aware of what their obligations are in relation to the gazettal notice and the DPIRD requirements. Definitely something we could look at in conjunction with Market West. We'd have to do it in, because obviously with the whole piece, but very much guided again by what DPIRD stated the requirements as per a particular pest. So. Infrastructure is our remit. To be honest, we haven't looked at it. It's something that we can look at, depending on what it will be, but it hasn't been on the radar. But with all of these things, you have to revisit and learn from the experience that you've been in. So what we understand from, and DPIRD might better correct me, is that the Qfly is quite a timid little fly, and doesn't like areas where there's a lot of movement, etc. So even just having forklifts and people and things like that would be enough in some instances, with cool rooms opening and etc. So, but it's definitely something we can look at.
So about 3 years ago, Citrus, but who have a biosecurity working group, engaged with DPIRD about, or were concerned about sort of strategic conversations rather than reactive response-based conversations with DPIRD and industry. And when I took that to our fruit committee, which is stone fruit and pome, they were interested in as well, and that started a conversation about a Hort Liaison Officer project, which was a joint initiative across the industries to try and get preparedness within the industry, and do some case studies. And, so through that process, we identified what people wanted done, which was some strategic work as well as some on-farm work. And so that's a 12-month project now that is up and running. It's called the HLO, which is Hort Liaison Officer Project. In my role is Hort Innovation. If that project decides it's something they want to continue and that it needs funding, it might be something that Hort Innovation may be able to progress in WA or nationally, because as a cross-industry initiative. So having a conversation about what that needs to look like and what's in it is something that Horticulture Bronwyn will be asking you guys and anybody else who's interested in progressing that. So that will probably need to take place over the next 6 months in order to sort of get that moving. And certainly in citrus, we don't hold events solely on biosecurity. We hook it into something else. So if there's going to be a labour update, which everybody shows up for, we then add our biosecurity message into that event, because nobody comes to a biosecurity alone event unless it's very threatening, like the disaster in Carnarvon or that level of impact. Everybody shows up. If it's a bit of a preparedness, passive, get a foot bath type of message, can be less of a hook, so you have to attach it. So it's a bit of marketing, so we can have a conversation about that too. Any questions about that project? So Helen's the citrus officer in that. Susie Murphy-White is the POM. Rachel Lancaster has been contracted to lead that project and do some of the high-level analysis. And Shay's on the steering committee, and bananas are in it as well. So there's 4 industries in that project.
Sonia, I just maybe wanted to know if you wanted to say anything about the biosecurity network that also runs and that kind of feeds into this. Everyone here may know about it or may not. I think most people on here should, but it's a good probably tie-in with the two.
Okay, so I think from what I can see, most of you are already on the Horticulture Biosecurity Advisory Committee. We meet usually twice a year, and it's an opportunity for information exchange about biosecurity, plant biosecurity, I should say, not any other type, between basically industry groups as well as the growers that you represent and DPIRD. And I think the next session is just coming up shortly. It's actually Friday next week. So please, if you're not already a member, quite welcome to add more people onto the committee. And it's not too onerous. Sometimes you even get a free lunch, but obviously not in the present time. I think it's just going to be a Microsoft or a Zoom meeting, I should say. So happy to have more members, and we also are happy to answer any questions that put to us in that sort of committee, as well as some information exchange. So what we're also trying to do is get actually the representatives from the various industries to talk more, rather than just sort of a one-way communication. Thank you.
So from my perspective, any protocol or decision that's made about putting implications onto growers or throughout the supply chain, market agents, transport people, it's not taken lightly, but also we try and get as much information on the implications by working with industry. So talking to as many people as we can about the implications that will have. Now, obviously there's some limitations on the ability of the department to modify those protocols because they're all about meeting the requirements of other states and other countries to assure that we're providing them a level of security that we're doing the right thing as well. So where we can get some really good insight into how it's impacting and what alternatives might be, they generally come from industry themselves. So if there are some really big pinch points, I do encourage industry to come and talk to us, and we'll have a think about the protocols that are in place, and if they can be applied or modified that will suit the trading partners. I think to make them as efficient and effective as possible, because there's the 2 points there. It's effectiveness in terms of Sonia's requirement to make sure our trading partners are happy and that we're not getting any movement of fly should they be there. And it's also then the implications on industry. So yeah, absolutely encourage people with practical ideas to come forward with them, and we'll see if we can fit them with the current protocols, or it's just the interpretation, or if it could be an addition to an approved manner. But again, I'm probably stepping on Sonia's toes a little bit because that's her area. But yeah, if you want to make a comment, Sonia, more than welcome.
Yeah, basically there is, I guess I call it, it's the code of practice which is what we're following. And so there is some flexibility in there. Are certain things that you have to do, but it is to a certain extent up to us to interpret how we are going to actually implement it. So there's a bit of flexibility. What usually happens is once we work out what we're going to do, we communicate with the other jurisdictions, and often we'll go to door directly to let them know what we're doing, just to make sure that there are no international market access implications for what we're proposing to do, particularly when we're proposing things like SIT, which we haven't really used before in a response until last year. So that's basically the way we communicate it out and make sure that it's actually suitable and that the door is comfortable with what we're doing. That one, Rowan. In short answer, no. Basically, there hasn't been any, nobody's sort of indicated a need to that from industry. However, if there is grower interest in actually having that kind of a forum, then obviously the department would be happy to sort of organise something. And I guess the other way that we've been doing, particularly nationally, so there's been quite a few fruit fly meetings that have been done nationally through the National Fruit Fly Council, and that's very much looking at using basically internet meetings, so meetings online. And I find that very effective because it means that growers don't actually have to travel from a place. They can just basically go from the paddock straight into being in a teleconference. So also very happy to organise that kind of a forum. So there's different ways, I think, now of delivering that information and that kind of a session. But it really depends on if there is actually industry interest in doing that. So again, we're always happy to oblige industry by providing information. But unless we know that there's actually a need for that and there's a desire for growers to actually have that, then we don't sort of tend to organise them, because I mean, I don't know how many meetings I've been to where it's almost been DPIRD outnumbering the number of growers that are actually in the meeting. That's very disappointing when you've sort of gone to the effort to actually put something together.
I was thinking, because citrus season is now entering into the new quarantine period, I thought that it would be good to bring some growers into the markets to see the types of things that people are using as, you know, on the different floors. Is that appropriate, or who would I ask to help coordinate with that? Or Helen will probably be the Helen, are you paying attention as much as the biosecurity lady? But is that, that was just another way I thought would be something the growers can then, because they all go to different floors and different floors are doing something, but it would be good to have that, a bit of a coordinated entry and things. Is that possible? And who should I organise it with?
I can probably take that one since it's my site. Look, we can help coordinate it, or you can also do it through Market West. Look, we often see growers on the floor who are coming to see their various market agents, but if you want to do a coordinated effort, probably work with us and we'll just bring Market West into the fold anyway. Obviously, early in the morning is best if you actually want to see it, and preferably not a Thursday because that's the busiest day on the floor. And, you know, just depending on the size of the group too, because obviously, you know, we've got 350 odd forklifts running around the site at any one time. So it's better off if we can have people spread out a bit over a couple of days if you're wanting to bring a bigger group, or it just means it takes a bit more management of people to actually escort them around on site. And they all need to be logged in as visitors and all that sort of stuff. So there's a bit of logistics. So if we can get names, etc. in advance, that always helps with our planning, etc. to make sure we've got enough vests and etc.
I thought the alternative was to do a videoed walkthrough, you know, somebody who's gifted in that space.
Well, DPIRD have actually been on site last week and have actually been gathering footage and photos and all that sort of stuff. So they're actually going to be putting together a video montage of what actually is the right thing to do and what happens on the market. So I'm not sure what their time frame is, but they've actually been on site to do exactly that.
Oh, that's brilliant. Excellent.
Yeah, as soon as possible is the time frame, but how long that's going to take is a little bit up in the air as we go through a few checks and balances that we need to happen at this end before we can publish anything in that kind of format.
That link, when that's ready, that'll be sent out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly something that we're very keen on all the growers having access to, but general public as well.
Did you want feedback from the audience before it gets finalised?
Happy to have it from them.
Not me, growers. That's best practice.
Yes, from growers as well, would be great. Always good to get feedback from growers.
As a development officer and as an extension officer, we're the ones that are fronting up to the growers, and you can see all the people that are involved today. It's not just a grower issue, it's a grower issue, it's an agent issue, it's a PMGL issue, it's a DPIRD issue, it's an industry body issue. And knowing that we can all get together, have a conversation and make it more comfortable for people with issues to go to the relevant authorities. So if it's a biosecurity thing, hit up Dave and Sonia. If it's a market thing, they know they can come to Rebecca. If they're having issues with their market agent or they're not sure how that setup is working, being able to have a contact that they can speak to, I think that is a real big positive, because often people don't know where to go. And we get hit with questions and we're like, oh, I'm not sure. So having you guys saying, come to us if you've got questions, that's what we're here for. This is really good.
Can I also just encourage growers, if they have got questions, etc., to talk to Market West here at the markets as well, because obviously they're a good conduit between growers and agents and things like that as well. So there, Rod McPherson there is another really important person in that information chain.
There's also a national network of biosecurity extension people being formed. They're having their first meeting sometime soon, which I can't quite recall, 25th of March, I think. So I think that'll be a good learning opportunity for us and anyone else.
But if there are no other questions, I will bring this to a close. We will make sure that we have all of the details for the guys that were the panelists, and also we'll add in the Market West guys. So this is an industry problem, and it's across industry, and it doesn't just affect the growers, it affects everybody, and we all need to be standing up and working together. So we'll make sure that everybody's details are out there, whether you grow vegetables, stone fruit, citrus, pome, contact your industry body if you don't know who else to contact, and we'll fire off emails and make phone calls to people endlessly to find you the answers that you want. But yes, thank you to the growers that came along, and thank you to the panelists and everybody that came along and asked questions. This was awesome, and if there's anything else that anyone needs to know, hit us up. We can hit these guys up. We've got to try and make this work. We've got to try and live with it. It's not going away. So thank you very, very much for coming along.